Let's get started. Hey, Julia.
Hi,
Saw you
Julia.
coming.
I think December 7th is no good, Coco. I think there's a WQI meeting that night.
This is just all the evening meetings on.
But yeah, I think there's WQI then.
And the 8th is the beginning of Hanukkah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So 7 days? No.
Because it's hard for someone to know this far out what's going to happen.
Absolutely. I was just throwing them out there so you guys could look at them and have an idea. Okay, so.
8th?
Yes.
8th,
There's next year.
yeah.
And I left the whole week of Thanksgiving open, and I did like the whole week around Christmas open, and then.
It might be lit out for the Toys by December 18th, I don't know.
I wouldn't blame you. I'm just saying, those are just the dates that, it looks like the calendar has an opening. So everyone can check your calendars and get back to me. All right, so we don't have minutes from the last meeting, they're still in progress. It was a busy meeting, so Coco's still working on them. So we'll do them at the next meeting. All
All
right,
right, we're going to continue on with Lori Beard Raymond's comments. I believe we got through chapter 2,
we finished chapter 2, so we're on chapter 3.
right? So here we go, chapter 3, summary. This is Lori.
So let's just regroup. Where are those?
Oh, let me see.
Online, so it all been consolidated on the town page.
If you go to the town website, is the easiest spot
yeah.
to pull them up.
Oh, okay.
They've been placed.
No, the folders, okay. So
It's also in your email.
I'm
I'm sure
sorry,
it's in an
on the
email.
spreadsheet or on Lori's stuff?
On Lori's email to us,
Okay,
Yeah,
And 15.
that one,
and what chapter? Where?
3.
Just give us a minute to.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff.
No problem.
Was it current documents received from public? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, they're easy to get there. Oh, but then I did send you that
Oh, yeah, the one with your note.
my notes. Did you find the date, Joanne?
And 15.
10:15. So if you do your email by, search your email by date, find something from me on October 15th.
No, that,
No?
October 15th was the original version.
Oh,
This is maybe your comments recently.
Oh, all right, I'll look if I can find it.
Everything is just in so many different places.
Can we finish chapter 2?
Yes.
Heights. that's-
October 9th, October 19th. If you go to the bottom near my signature,
Ah, there it is.
yeah, I saved one in Word and one on, you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you. We got through 2, right?
2, yeah,
So we're up to 3.
yep.
John, did you get
I'm
there?
sorry.
Where?
Okay,
Them out.
so Meg, you're gonna take notes on this, or should I?
Yeah, I'm going to take notes.
Gotta walk and chew gum.
You don't have to walk and talk at the same time.
So basically, we are going over emailed in comments that we
Yes.
received as a committee, letters that we received. This is not the online comments.
No, these are, we
No,
don't.
I'm just being
Yes.
clear. to the
Yeah,
Public.
we've done those.
And
So we're going back to pick up Beard's
Yes,
email first.
And then
Right.
Sudol's.
And then
and we'll have Mr. Sudol's and
Okay.
Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corporation submitted. There are other random ones that, again, we're just through chapter 4, because then we'll start with 5 on the boards. And then there are other ones that just, again, a very nice, well-reasoned email on the Marina District. Well, that's for another chapter. So we're trying to keep it together.
But all we've received after the 15th.
Nothing else.
No, nothing.
Not accepted.
We're only.
Everything was before the. I know what I was trying to say. Sorry.
Only got up to received comments on chapter 4.
Yes.
Period. End of story.
Right, and then we'll go to the board, right? Okay.
We'll get it.
Doing, you know,
We just try to be clear so everybody understands.
where we are, yeah.
Very good. That's helpful.
Including ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, we also all keep talking on top of each other, so it gets confusing.
Summary of findings suggest, this is Lori's comment, suggests protecting space and limiting growth can drive up prices and restrict access to all but the wealthy. This neglects to recognize the unprecedented flood of second homeowners buying property during and immediately following pandemic 2021 at any price or prices well above assessed values, which eventually drives up all assessments. So where is the data that supports this opinion? Well, assessments, when they're updated annually, this is, they merely reflect the market, whatever the proximal or near-term or medium-term causes are. And assessments are not the reasons that property taxes go up. I think her point here is that, is what she's trying to drive at. And it's really the budgets that are driving your tax bill, not the assessments, because assessments somewhat go up together, come down together, unless you've done something to your house.
But the price point is driven up by people buying at the market or above.
Right, and as Meg pointed out, we have these little building boomlets. We had one after 9/11. We had one now in the pandemic, and that goes the same thing for prices. It's a supply-demand thing when people really want to be here. And we won't be able to tell how long that demand is going to stay until we're 5 years into it. So I think this discussion in the chapter was a good one, and I think we should leave it. So let's move.
And we, and answer this directly, we have as much data as we have. We don't have the future data. So
Right, and we don't have all the reasons people moved out here. Maybe the pandemic was the, oh, well, I want to get out of the city.
The trigger.
Right, but then you come out here and you're like, oh, how can I figure out a way to stay here 12 months a year? I mean, I think that I just feel like Shelter Island is at the next level of being discovered. And the ferry is no longer considered to be an obstacle.
Right.
And that was for years, and that's why we were always lagged our neighbors on the forks, because people considered it an inconvenience. I think it's the opposite now. It's considered an asset.
Also just changed a little because of the economy with the increase in mortgage rates. So right after the pandemic, things were much lower and
Yes,
we had a lot of like rentals and buy-ups. And then right after that, things started going up on the
Right.
mortgage rates. And
Right.
it's not that's gonna deter people forever, but it puts like a little lull.
A little damper.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. They say that people don't, it's the idea that if you have a mortgaged home, you don't sell it in this economy. Much, you know, you might be able to buy, but you don't want to refinance at this rate.
We did talk about people buying with cash too.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing, yeah, on the higher end especially. Page 24, it says that local authorities have made efforts to preserve historical sites and historic preservation methods implemented to prevent development. Lori wants to know where, how. Chapter 77 of the town code has not even been implemented. And whenever historic districts or structures are brought up in public hearings, they're often disregarded by authorities and the committees such as ZBA and Planning Board. My response is, well, Sylvester Manor is one place where the town has made an effort. We can also include Cackle Hill as an example. In addition, there's context to the quote that I'd like to add, and this is it surrounds the wording that Lori did quote. Island residents and local authorities have made efforts to preserve the island's natural environment and historic sites. Conservation easements, zoning regulations, historic preservation efforts have been implemented to protect the island's unique character and prevent overdevelopment.
Although this has been an issue in public discourse recently.
Yeah, and how, I mean, we've had this discussion, I think you guys will remember, in this, going over land use. Shelter Island traditionally has been a place of don't tell me what to do. And yet now we see all our beauty, not all, but we see threats to the character, the visual character of the island. And so how strong should the recommendations be? I think the idea of the historic district, the overlay, the idea of rebooting or starting up the historical advisory committee. The town just again signed up again for partnership with the Historical Society, and maybe that in the future could be boosted. But because I think they'll become more and more important to our own documents, preservation. So I feel like we've got a fair amount in there, but is it enough? I don't know.
Well, we're going to certainly back to the whole zoning issue, like tightening up
Yeah,
zoning loopholes and enforcing what's there and what might be needed.
right, right. And the whole tear down thing that is discussed, you know, in terms of what, if you tear down, what can you rebuild? What can you build in that place? But it doesn't get to the nub of it. I'm comfortable with what's in there because I kind of am a property rights person to a certain extent. You know, if you bought a property.
But people will buy historic homes and then just raise it and put up.
I know. Do we want to, you know,
There are a couple of misnomers that are out there about certain properties that have been developed. I know for example, the owner went to the New York State and the federal, it's an old house, 16-something foundation, which is preserved, when the architect got in there and it's so rotten and damaged, there was nothing salvageable except half the wall.
yeah,
But then the decision was, okay, do we try and preserve our half a wall and still claim it's not enough? They won't accept it. So they tried very hard, the owner did, because they realized they had a historical house.
Right.
They built it back in kind, it lost its whatever.
yeah.
But that happens, you know,
But that's unavoidable and they took due
right.
diligence to
But
at
to
least
the
review
to the
it.
public, it looks like
There's a
you bulldozed it.
page articles, a huge human cry over the property, if we're talking about the same one.
The prime property.
Yeah.
So could we say something, I'm just thinking about what you just said, like, is there a way to phrase a sentence like perhaps, like, keep this initial part of it, but then say to bolster and maybe improve upon zoning, to encourage the continued preservation of historical sites and methods
When
like.
possible.
Something like that, like use that phrase zoning
Yeah.
and just to say like because we've all agreed that there are these loopholes and things are vague and that's something down the road, probably for the next administration, right? So, but why can't it hurt to put that in there?
Yeah.
Like that's the foundation thing that might lead to, I think it's not that we don't do it, it's that, I think her comment is that we're not doing it consistently, so maybe that
Or
can
strong
only
enough.
happen if
Yeah.
we figure that out first, so maybe
And I
like.
think that we kind of do that with the historical zone, like the historic district zone.
Yeah. Which is an overlay, remember, I mean, it's not, you know, relaxing any other zoning restrictions, but we do that, and we don't only say the heights, it's also important architectural structures throughout the island. And that would be the work of a committee to get going. And so I think maybe we've got in here what's necessary.
Maybe we just want to make sure the language is strong enough, so it's using those shall and those, you know, those kind of operative words, not just, it would be nice if we did these.
I kind of like to poll all you guys on that, shall or should?
I think it depends on the context of the sentence.
Yeah. Technically, that's right.
Oh, that's kind of woolly.
It will make your head spin.
Well, should is a prescriptive term.
Yes.
It's not like, that has power to it.
Shall is stronger though.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so you want to use caution or purposefully use shall where you think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Should is a little laxer.
Interesting.
It's a moot point, but page 24 is nothing about the historical, I'm looking at the actual.
Yeah, it's actually page 23.
Okay, that's where she was.
Yeah,
Right,
it's,
it's on 23.
it's actually page
Thanks, Sean.
23, and it's the bullet that says conservation and preservation.
Okay.
And because it's about existing conditions, it's kind of listing the things that we've currently done to kind of help. So conservation easements, zoning regulations, historic preservation efforts have been implemented. So it's listing the current condition. So when we get to the zoning portion where it has the historic district, we make sure that the language in there is strong enough to kind of cover her concern.
So it's just making sure that these early chapters are descriptive of what's currently existing,
Right.
not prescriptive in terms of what we're recommending.
Right.
Land use, figure 2 is accurate. Why inaccurate? Why are both public and private? Are you sure we didn't cover this? Okay. Courses listed as commercial, ferry offices, ferry support facilities. Doesn't like the categorization. White Oak Nursery, Sylvester Manor, Mashomick. Well, here are my responses. Ferries, they're classified as transportation/utilities. That's correct. The decision to classify the golf courses as open space, conservation, and parks, conserved lands and parks, is defensible in their current use. They provide open space, parks, and recreational opportunities, especially the publicly owned course. I think Mishomik is correctly done as preserved land, conserved land. Sylvester Manor is described as part conserved land and part agricultural, and White Oak should be changed.
Yeah.
That's the one that's
So
still,
that's the one that we just made the
yeah.
correction on. That's the only one that's commercial.
Oh, that next point, I believe
Because
it.
it's
yeah.
how they're currently being used.
Right. And use, yeah.
So I don't, the Goat Hill is public, private, commercial? How do we list it?
It's public,
Public.
but it's in a category that is conservation, open space, recreation.
Her concern is whether it's commercial or not.
Yeah, but I don't see it as commercial. I don't know.
She wants to see them listed as commercial, instead of.
Conservation, open space, recreation.
Parks and Recreation.
Well, Parks and Recreation seems more appropriate.
Right.
I think they're defensible. I think Lori's comment of commercial, yes, it could be that.
I mean, there was a restaurant there and there's a pro shop, so there is an element of commerce.
I decided to say that it's
And the
not
restaurant.
part of open space, it's more part of a vista. I think that's a better classification of it, of both of them.
You could have a note if you wanted to be specific, indicating that there was some commercial aspects to it, but that it's still,
How do other comp plans list?
yeah, that's a good question.
Right, that's something we should,
Well, they usually list them as open space, which is why they listed them that way here.
Right,
Yeah, this is from the
Because-
consultant.
right, that's what I'm saying.
Right, because if someone's looking at the map and they see this huge red commercial, they're gonna think like industrial park.
right.
They're not gonna think that it's, how many acres of
What?
open space that,
Yeah.
So typically, that's why they labeled them the way they did.
So could we do a note like, open space, and then with a note like slash business, commercial, sorry.
Small percentage of, or small.
Mixed use.
Mixed use. We-
Yeah, that might.
Yeah, mixed use thing might be a better thing, I agree.
Like White Oak Farm, it's commercial, but it's also a large area of plants growing there. I mean, it's open space in a sense, that way it isn't. It's not as vast of an area as a golf course, but they do have a large amount of land devoted to green
But it
things.
differs to me than the golf course, because we own the golf course. The town owns it, so.
But which golf course are you talking
The
about?
public, Goat Hill.
But or is she talking about?
Talking about both of them, I think.
She's asking about both.
Well, because the heights.
I mean, this is about.
She mentions both.
Yeah, it's existing conditions and how they're being used. So, but she's saying that we should list both golf courses, Goat Hill and the Country Club, as commercial. So she just thinks that we should reclassify them to commercial.
But if
Goat
the
Hill is single-family
pattern
residence.
is that a comprehensive plan would listed as open space, then, we don't want it to look like you said, some gigantic red blot there.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's,
But you could have a note to the effect that there was a commercial aspect, a small segment. I mean, it's a golf course.
yeah.
But isn't this leading to what's the concern if you label it as a commercial or if you don't?
Yeah.
Where does that lead us? Let's
Yeah,
say
that's a good
commercial, and so what? Then what is, what?
I don't think
comes after that?
that's why I don't think it's impactful.
Like someone you're saying, so someone looks at it and says, oh, sees this big red dot of commercial, and therefore what's our?
That's potentially more negative to the town versus this is open space.
Yeah.
And just the title, it is golf course. Every golf course in America has pro shop, they maybe have a snack bar. I mean, they'd all have something like that.
Right.
But we're not changing the zoning, we're just describing how it's used and its impact on life.
And I think also percentage wise of the area, if you look at it, the majority of that is gonna be open space.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be a
Yeah.
building or commercial building or something like that.
So I'm still leaning toward mixed use. Or sorry, like slash, put a little note.
Yeah, just see if it has a note qualifying it.
Yeah, because mixed use, I think Morley,
Just made that up.
Morally, it's,
Morley, more describes a residential slash commercial.
Yeah.
So that's usually,
The fact of the matter that the golf courses are open space. They
Yeah.
contribute to, the trees contribute to.
And you see people walking on Goat Hill,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
they're not golfing, or even women.
All the time.
On Gardeners Bay too.
Yeah. When you get away with it. White Oak is single-family residential. It was never changed after.
Right. It's currently zoned single-family residential, but it is a commercial, it's a business. I mean,
Or current use, I mean.
the current use is a business.
Yeah, so that should be changed.
The golf course, I mean, Gardner's Bay is also, people hunt on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, they wouldn't hunt in a commercial area.
It's on the it's on the outskirts of it, on the edge, on the perimeters.
Yeah.
Okay, so zoning regulations do not mention accessory sleeping quarters, only main dwelling units are listed. Add accessory sleeping quarters, accessory apartments, pool houses. Consistent language with specifics needs to be updated in the town code, so applications to the town are not playing name games. It's cottage, is it an accessory apartment, accessory sleeping quarters, pool house, something else? Yes, this is a comment for chapter 4, though. It's not for existing conditions, I don't think. Right? Yeah.
We did talk about the difficulty of classifying everyone's private property in these categories.
Yeah, and I think
Not a bad idea, but I mean, it's going to be tough.
it is, and I think it's Lori who, she's saying the name, but maybe it's in the next, it might be in her next comment. Development potential is too general. Does not address or mention existing developed lands with potential to develop or add accessory living structures. CBA ruled that only one accessory sleeping quarter structure was allowed per property in 2008 with bedrooms. To get around that determination, applicants play the name game. So, for example, labeling one structure a pool house, another accessory sleeping quarters, as well as playing name games with rooms. For example, 2 bedrooms and a study or an art studio. Need specifics with specific regulations, otherwise enforcement is impossible. It comes down to use or furniture, which is ridiculous. This is a good point. Again, in terms of existing conditions, I'm not sure it belongs here, but I kind of do take, I take a little bit of exception to her that the development potential is not great. Doesn't mention existing developed lands with potential to develop. Yes, it does. If you all want to go to the land map, I think it pretty much does a good job of saying what the development potential is. What page is that?
It's on page 30.
But again, this is
Thank you.
referencing loose zoning
Right.
applications where people can sneak in things that probably are not in the spirit of the zoning law, but that.
Yeah. No, that is true. And I think that part of the moratorium discussion is going to sort of try to tackle that issue, which is, what does the health department say, Mike? You can have a kitchen, a dining room, a living room, and a den maybe, and everything else is a bedroom. If it's, that's, no more, you can't, to just not be able to do that anymore. So your septic would be sized correctly and all of that. So I don't think our land use map then needs to change. I think it's good
I think it's.
and accurate. I have a lengthy retort to that, but I don't think it's necessary to read. The map speaks for itself. Proposed zoning changes should be within the zoning chapter and called out, explained what they are meant to achieve / goals. Noted, and Sean has already directed our attention to that. Proposed zoning changes should be zoned, called within, and called out and explained what they're meant to achieve. So he would like to say, these are the problems with the zoning code, a nice succinct paragraph or 2 on that. This is what we think the changes should be. And then we all said we could take the list that's in chapter 11, slap it on the back of chapter 3, and there it is. But we already have it made. And then keep them also with the associated chapters as the consultants want to do. So I think we've solved this one as well. Oh, B1, beautiful B1, should not be eliminated. If apartments above commercial are wanted, change that in B1. Or eliminate B1 and write a new zone. B1 restrictions of use are good, so the town board can decide what's best.
You're good. I was gonna say, why don't we save the B1 and come back to
Yeah.
it when we discuss B1, because I think that's gonna be. a lot.
Exactly, and I have it here. It's under discussion, allowable uses in B1, and also the stricter, or I should just say strict, guidelines for making it pretty.
So, accessory sleeping, this should go in the next one as well.
Right.
Well, housing.
Yes. Restrict boat trailers from being stored on the side of the roads. This is a matter of enforcement. I don't believe it's a comp plan issue.
Right, that's enforcement.
You know, you can't be in the right of way. Considering lowering square footage to 4,000 square feet or less, Martha's Vineyard, for example, et cetera. Eliminate special permits for anything over these limits, limit the size of structures that can have water and septic to two per property regardless of size. I think the plan does address this, except capping the number of accessory structures you can have. That might be worthy.
Yeah, that is in chapter 5.
Economy, no,
No, you're okay.
not sure.
I think it was chapter 4. Or, I don't know,
Maybe.
the next chapter.
Yeah. Senior housing is barely mentioned.
You skipped require permits.
Oh, require permits for sheds, patios, sorry, thank you.
They are, though.
I thought
Yeah,
so,
that's
yeah,
Required.
yeah,
Now, enforcement is a different issue, but
right, yeah. Most people don't know their setbacks, property, wetlands delineation. I don't see a problem here. I mean, it's noted.
Oh, so she says town used to require permits for sheds, but it was removed in 2019.
Small sheds,
But I
yeah.
think that they actually reinstated that.
I think so, because I had to apply.
Yeah, so that they reinstated the fact that no matter what, you have to get a permit for a shed because people were putting them where they didn't belong.
Oh, yeah.
So they reinstated that when we updated the fee schedule.
Oh, okay, all right,
Again, enforcement would come to play with that.
yeah, yeah.
They have to be anchored in a certain way, too. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a whole set of rules.
It's like, and for hurricanes and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Can't be blowing around.
So you don't have them rolling across your lawn.
Senior housing is barely mentioned. A senior community, living community designed so seniors could interact, share space, common space with a walkable area would be benefit. Suggestion for a town-owned property, question mark. The housing plan is part of the comp plan, and senior housing is discussed in some detail in our housing plan. In addition, Goal 4.2 does provide for a broader range of year-round housing options across income, household size, and age groups. So I keep in mind that housing plan, it's important. And in 9.6A, support the expansion of services for the senior population, including provision for affordable housing, access to healthcare, et cetera. So I think we covered it. Page 44, talk about housing sizes scaled for lot sizes. Current allowable lot coverage and building coverages are too generous. Need to make smaller in all zones so the lot is not overcrowded or built to the max. Adjust based on lot size. I think the plan does address this with the examples, which I think we've taken some of that out, but
The examples are
But the-
misleading.
yeah.
They were confusing.
But the words are in there in terms of graduated limits. And the moratorium is also creating a space to discuss in detail this, and perhaps the next town board and the public on the specific topic of this will determine the limits that are necessary at different property sizes. Page 44, enforcement.
Yeah, so these are all in chapter 4 now that she's commenting on, but she just has it mislabeled.
Yeah. Oh, she has. Oh, okay.
Yeah, page 44 is in chapter 4. I was
Thank you. Maybe I didn't, maybe I just,
No, it doesn't say chapter 4 until next.
oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Chapter 4 is after the next page.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, page 44, over and over again, I hear, yeah, enforcement. And what needs a permit, what doesn't, 10,000 limit on repairs, renovations, et cetera. She goes on in this vein. I just think this is too granular. This is too, I don't think it's for a comp plan.
Right.
What's the operational plan is really what she's thinking ahead.
Yeah, I think she does mention illegal conversions. Again, that's being considered on whatever maximum sizes are determined ultimately, that it should include all built space, finished or not. And that's, the only reason for that, to change our code in that way is to combat illegal conversions. So
Right.
I think it's covered. Density increases should not be considered in areas with infrastructure in place or not. Every one of those infrastructures have limited capacity. None are unlimited in sewer or water availability. Who pays for upgrades to support increased density? not to be confused with affordable housing goal. I don't know, I just think, I'm not sure, I don't find this very clear, but that infrastructure should not be used to increase density in residential areas. It's
We've
just-
made that statement very
Made that clear.
multiple times. So
Yeah, I think we're good, based on what
she
you,
meant something else there, but
yeah, it's a little hard to parse.
Well, I think part of what she's saying is that any infrastructure that we do develop will have a maximum capacity.
In and of
So
itself.
right, it will not be able to take on anything and everything. Like there is a limit.
Right.
Like the Heights has a limit to how much waste they can handle in a day. They have enough, there's a limit to how much water they can pump in a day. So each thing that you construct is going to have a natural limit to it.
And also,
that's what she was
had the
saying
town
too.
gone with the wastewater system that you were considering,
That
there was a
has-
limit, Joe Fenora had explained, there was even a limit on that, like who could attach at the end.
Right.
So.
Right.
Because there's a capacity to how much you could expand, how big is your footprint, what's your area, what are your setbacks?
Is that self-evident, though? Is that something that needs to be, I mean, yes.
It's
Right.
sort of just yeah,
Yeah, I mean.
it's innate
Go in.
in the fact that
Right. The town's contract with West Neck Water is, between West Neck Water and Suffolk County Water is insufficient in protecting the town, property owners and the town. Residents are plagued with exorbitant water bills and customer service issues. The town has not taken the time to ask the customers how's it going. There is a volunteer committee that still meets. They should be, representing their customer base. Deering Harbor villagers I know are very happy with the service that they've received. And the lack of infrastructure improvements that were delayed or postponed in West Neck, those chickens are now roosting.
Yep.
I mean, I think the same issues were Deering Harbor, except the impact financially perhaps wasn't felt as much by the populace there. But if you want good water, we'll have to pay, to upgrade.
yeah.
I mean, I know there've been a couple problems, but I don't think it's quite as widespread as she's
Yeah,
indicating here, although if it happens to you, then it seems like, it's really pretty significant, and I get that.
yeah, and I
Overall,
guess.
haven't received a lot of complaints, and people are usually very willing to let me know when something's not working. So, overall, I think the process is going well, upgrading the infrastructure. I know there are a few homes that had leaks between the road and their home, which was that's your private property. You have to upgrade that. You have to fix
I
that.
have to fix that. I mean, it's a lot of water.
Is the volunteer committee clear on like their responsibility to check in with the West Neck residents,
Yeah.
I'm just asking, do
And
they
they're available.
regularly do it, or?
Lori would certainly know, and I think most people on West Neck, you just go to the town website, go to West Neck Water, and they're still listed, their emails.
And most
Lisa
people
Shaw
know,
would be the
call
person
Lisa
to
Shaw.
talk to. Yeah, they call her, and she really has her finger on the pulse of what's going on.
Yeah.
She's usually right on top of it if something
Yeah,
isn't working well.
their upgrade doesn't mean they're gonna go change every single pipe, every single valve, everything. They're just gonna basically change things as need be.
They had a big plan, yeah,
There is
they did some
sequential plan.
major change. They had to replace pipe with code pipe because it
Right.
wasn't.
Right.
They're switching out all the meters to digital meters. Some of them were not really functioning very well. So, yeah, I think they've stayed on top of it.
yeah,
Frankly, I think they've done an amazing job, but
right.
it's
It
a lot
did come at a cost.
get fixed so that we'd be up to code. And we have wells that are not functioning really well too. So they're kind of trying to figure out what to do next in terms of getting another well.
Well, those grants have been approved and they're ready to go.
Yeah.
So we got $500,000 to replace the wells. So that's good.
Yeah.
That'll help
Yeah.
offset the cost.
Great.
But what do you think Lori was looking for in terms of a change and what we can or cannot add? I just want to make sure, like, before you go
This
on,
isn't
like,
really
what
an
would-
actionable item in the
Yeah.
contract.
Right.
This is just someone has to talk to the West Neck Water Board and ask them to reach out and do a survey of the constituency.
I think where it does impact is, for the comp plan, is that we do recommend that Shelter Island declare itself a water district, water districts that already are existing. And the reason that suggestion is there is not to bring everybody water from Suffolk County Water Authority tomorrow. It's there because wherever they're going to be asked to come in by the population of, let's just say, Monantic Peninsula, it gives the town then the right to say to Suffolk County, you have to sit at the table. If we don't have a water district, Suffolk County Water Authority has of right the ability to bring water wherever, whenever it wants to. That's it. I mean, and so what Lori is saying here, she didn't like the way the town dealt with West Neck Water, with Suffolk County Water, but at least we did. And it was a very long process with a lot of input from the West Neck Water Board. I disagree with her opinion on it, but that being said, we did engage.
Well, and another thing to remember about districting is it's creating a legal jurisdiction over an area.
Yes, that's
It's
it.
not necessarily implementing infrastructure.
Yeah.
So if we create a district, we're claiming legal jurisdiction over that zone. So if someone wants to come and do something in that area, they have to get permission.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that's the phrase then that needs to be
Legal
in there.
jurisdiction.
Right, legal jurisdiction.
So we
We
should
need to use that
phrase,
language
yes,
to stop the
misinformation.
unclear
Yes.
misinformation.
Yeah, okay, good.
There was a lot of misinformation or confusion about that when this whole process was happening, because West Neck had kind of run, it had its own board, we did our own thing.
Yes.
And then the town said, well, we're going to we're going to start negotiating with Suffolk County Water Authority, and some members of the board felt that, well, wait, we're supposed to do all of this, but then all of a sudden you guys get to make all these decisions. So it was fraught.
Yes.
Yeah,
Discussion was fraught.
It was
But the
frightening.
bottom line was that the system was very shaky.
yeah.
Something had to happen.
Yeah.
And if we had to do, we couldn't even find someone to be our water manager.
Right, right. No, it's
Yeah.
true.
Now we have pros.
And that was kind of the catalyst for the whole thing, was that the person who had been testing your wells was like, I'm retiring, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so you had no one there to do maintenance on your system. And it had gotten to the point where it needed more than maintenance, it needed an
Yeah,
overhaul.
yeah.
So again, to cover her concern though, maybe what Rebecca's saying, like that's, would we add that,
Clarify
Yeah,
that.
we
Language.
Clarify that language.
Jurisdiction.
We're not using clear language, so that everybody's understanding
Right.
what the end.
Water district is.
Yeah.
And just because even though we may not live in West Neck, I don't personally, but I have a lot of friends that live in West Neck Water, and I've heard some, and I just want to be sensitive to like what happened to them, so we can put that in and.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we're recommending the town proceed with the idea of developing a water district.
Yes, to declare
Okay, just,
Declare the town as a whole.
water district.
right. Second point is, what would be the procedure of doing that? Is that something the town board just says, hey, we're going to set this up? How does that happen?
it has to go for a referendum vote.
Okay,
So if we were to try to create a water district for the island that included all the areas that are not currently in a water district, because that's how it would work. So, people wouldn't be paying for two water districts. It's like, if you're in the Heights, that's your district. If you're in West Neck, that's yours. If you're outside of that water district, in order to create that, you would have to go and present it to the public, and the public would have to vote to approve it by referendum. So it's a process, and it would be,
If you
Well,
want.
again, we have this
Island-
conflict between, the subtext is really that you've got an outside agency
right.
that, has had some historical issues coming into this location and telling people they have to do X, Y, Z, and instead of my well, my choice.
Right.
So that conflict is very real.
It is absolutely real. And I think what people don't recognize at this point in time is that right now, because the majority of Shelter Island is not in a Shelter Island water district, they are de facto the legal jurisdiction of Suffolk County Water Authority when it comes to providing potable water to the public.
Yeah, that's true.
So they have more power now than if we were a district.
Absolutely.
That's an important point.
That's the important.
That's a very
That's the
important point.
misconception.
Yeah, that is exactly.
So
But the language that Meg just came up with is that's it. That's just what we need.
But that's actually not in this, that's in another chapter.
we need to clarify that. It's in another chapter. It's in the natural resources
If they
chapter.
do that, that doesn't automatically mean they're going to make everyone switch to Suffolk County water.
No.
But at least it kind of allows them to have a seat at the table and make those decisions, right?
Enough people.
What would be automatic, Suffolk County Water, would be if we didn't have a district. That's what the key thing to remember, that if their number is 40% of an area wants water, they give it to them.
Right.
And if most of the homes or properties in that area have non-potable, that number drops to 20% is necessary for them to bring the water in.
So looking at something like Silver Beach, it's a real issue.
Right. Because it's essentially a public health issue. So, the state and the county say, we want you to solve this.
Yeah.
So it would be up to them to either purchase property for a well site or lease it, rent it, whatever. But if they can provide the service, if they can provide the water, then they're obligated to do that if there's a demand for it.
So defining all these terms, pointing into legal implications may be critical, just so the readers don't think.
Right, carte blanche to.
Right, for the town to just bring in water willy-nilly.
And we're promoting development/density.
Right. The goal is to
Yeah,
maintain.
that was a big issue.
Right. It's creating a rule, and that's what should.
In that clarification, we make sure we say that if we did not have one, this would be the result, which could be out of control. I mean, we wouldn't have any way of making a statement. We don't want that,
I like home rule, I think that's a
40%
good
is home
phrase.
rule.
Yeah, home rule.
One term that I think most people understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think these are a little out of order, but maybe I'm wrong. The next point is in order to preserve peace and tranquility, as this chapter suggests, need to strengthen noise ordinance, not the reverse, as chapter 11 suggests.
Yeah, they do get a little out of.
It's a little out of, right?
Yeah.
But again, adding leaf blowers and other gas-powered landscaping restrictions to landscaping companies. It just, there is a recommendation, 9.2B, develop an equitable approach to controlling noise disturbances. And then it goes on to discuss how that could be done. So I think we do not encourage expanding noise.
Yeah.
but again, that's probably enforcement. It's probably not- so.
Yeah. Consider requirements for a fence permit. Many people installing fences do not know the code and install over the property line. Consider.
I sure was told. I put the wrong size fence up. Because the fence guy said, oh, you can do this. And so we said, okay. And then, like 3 weeks later, we got a letter. Take it all down. So
I
there's,
just had a case of two cases in Silver Beach
It's too high or too close to the road?
in the wrong place completely and too high. So
Good
it
point.
just happened. So I'm saying this is a real thing.
This is a real thing.
I do think fence permits make sense. I mean,
Yeah, and we don't need them now. So 7.9A, again, a little out of order, does say promote, this also says wildlife, have the setbacks for the fences for wildlife to navigate.
I'm for that as well.
So promote habitat preservation, restoration, so islanders and visitors can enjoy a healthy ecosystem, protect indigenous plants, biodiversity, blah, blah, blah. The town should set fencing regulations to include a minimum setback from the property line to maintain wildlife borders. What else should go in there?
Also wetlands. So the issue that we had was in the wetlands.
Like someone would put a fence in the
The
wetlands?
person did the permitting correctly for what they were doing, except while they were doing that, they just threw in a fence on the wetlands.
Oh,
To find it. So, it's coming out now. So I'm just saying like that,
Yeah.
yeah.
can we add something in there about the wetlands too?
Should include minimum setback from the property line and the wetlands?
And that's in chapter 7.
Yeah, it's 7.9A.
How does everyone else feel about that? I don't want to speak for everybody.
Well, I think
What do you?
no matter what, it has to go before the town board. So I think that it's a good thing to put
Delicate
in.
areas? I don't know. You
so we don't
No, you
have
can
those
rephrase
right
it.
now, or they just, there's no.
There's no need for a fence permit. So there's regulations on where fences should go, but.
And you can't have it more than 4 feet at the, when you do it.
More than a certain percentage of your property area.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, but the primary goal of the fence rule is to not bar wildlife from entering your property so that you don't create a tunnel where they can only be on the road. So for example, if everybody had a massive hedge or fence all the way along the road that deer couldn't jump over, they'd be forced to stay in the street, which could cause problems with traffic
I
and.
don't particularly want them in my yard.
Nobody wants that anywhere.
It's not just deer, it's raccoons, it's fox, it's squirrels, it's
Groundhogs.
Groundhogs.
everything. It's like,
It's so destructive.
You know what I'm thinking?
Can't we just put a little sign like deer, don't.
Deer with a big turkeys.
Can we just like put something a little stronger or just recreate that or something?
Fence permits and no fence in wetlands.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's adding it to the,
Maybe an extensive
I mean, I
review
think
of
that's kind of
zoning
a
on fencing,
no-brainer.
right.
both what it consists of and how it's, monitored.
Review fence regulations.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, when we get into that chapter, I'll bring it up again and I'm
Yeah,
just
so you
making the
can
notes.
review it to protect indigenous plants, biodiversity, wetlands, all that kind of stuff.
I just,
Just to-
I'm just throwing a, what about deer movements? If everybody's up on their shoulder, side to side, property line to property line, how does a deer make through that property?
Well, just keep it, picket fence it, don't, like I have, it's like a split rail.
Yeah.
Don't put these, you know, where they can't go through.
Yeah, don't use deer fencing.
Because then you channel them to a spot that may be inconvenient for roads, that's a factor.
But it does suggest a corridor so that there is at least a
Right,
place.
so like there's a setback, so you can't have the fence
Yeah.
right on the property line, maybe it's 5 feet in from the property line to
Right.
create some kind of natural
Right.
corridor for things to do.
So I
Like,
mean,
I was gonna say, if you think about all the properties that abut the Westmoreland area, if you've been back there, there's nice little channels and you can see the deer run right through it and it's fine. So, because
Yeah.
they're not, there's like a space in between, it's like a buffer zone. So-
Right. And some people prefer, you know, the deer fence, keeping deer out of their yard so they don't have to spray.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and yeah, if you have kids, you've got deer stuff scat all over the yard. I mean, these are issues, or dogs eating it,
Yeah.
not to mention ticks.
Lori's next point, in housing, I'm just going to cut right to the chase because it's a good question. Shouldn't renters be entitled to know what is in the water that they drink so that they can decide for themselves whether or not to drink it? So, you know, we're beefing up our rental law. We have been doing that over the last year, a couple of changes. Should this suggestion be incorporated that if you're going to sign up for a rental license, part of that should be you have to submit a water test?
But, okay, you submit a water test, but then what?
Then what? Yeah, well, I think, I just got a rental license. I think you have to renew it every other year. I think it's good for 2 years. So maybe every time you renew it, you'd have to do a water test. Maybe not for everything, maybe, because for everything is expensive.
The only problem with water tests is that seasonally, it changes, you know, I would say, specifically, we're concerned about nitrates, they come and go with the seasons.
Yeah,
So you get one in a season when it's high, you would be liable to be able to, you know, provide water for somebody or something like that. If you got it when it's low, it would be different.
yeah.
And these tests are expensive. They're not something you can just go get and snap your fingers. So to ask someone to go do that might be onerous. And I just wonder about too, again, enforcement. I mean, I have a rental property, my nitrates are too high. I provide reverse osmosis water to drink and cook with in the building. So they have that. That's how I solve that problem. But I don't know, how do I prove that to the town? Every time I've talked about reverse osmosis to this group of people who are dealing with water, they, oh, no, that's a bad thing to do, don't do that, it
Well, it's
doesn't
only in
work.
some areas, not all, but.
Okay, well, I've had so much resistance about the benefits of reverse osmosis that, I don't know, so you're forcing a homeowner to do strange things, that I don't know if makes sense.
No, I understand your concern. Well, and I think the reverse osmosis thing, it's different if it's just like an under the sink canister than if
Oh,
it's
you
a
mean the
whole
real-
house.
I'm thinking of the
Like if
real
you're doing
unit,
a
that's
whole
what I'm
house,
thinking.
that's significant,
That's what
but under the sink, it's
Like you can
not.
shower in this water, you
Yeah.
can clean things with it, you just can't drink it or consume it or cook, you know.
But I think Lori's point is good. You're thinking, you're giving us, you know, the landlord's point of view, but she's giving us the renter's point of view. And what do we as a town owe them for protection or?
But I think Judd's right also, is that homeowners are going to balk at yet another regulation that
Yeah.
might impact their renting their
Right.
ADCs and.
When I got report,
Or else they're going to be less likely to comply, and they're just going to rent it.
right.
Then not get the license, yeah.
Water testing are we talking about? Because you know, there's
Suffolk
different.
County
there's
came and did my
level.
water testing, and
Like
they
the
wrote me a
regular.
letter saying your water nitrate level is too high for infants and toddlers.
Right.
Okay.
Anybody else is fine. So I've never rented it to an infant or a toddler, except I now have an infant there. But we have reverse osmosis available, and that's always tested also, and there's nothing in it, is water. That's what's in the reverse osmosis. So it, you know, I don't know.
I don't know.
If you share that result, I'm a renter, I'm going to be, even if I don't have a toddler, I'm not going to be happy to hear that. I'm going to want you to do something about that.
Right.
I mean, it's okay for me to drink. Why? You know, I mean,
Well, it's because of brain development.
I
It's
understand,
really
but-
not a problem for someone who's got a fully mature brain.
well,
And
and who,
I have good water and I have people bring bottled water. They'll fill my fridge with bottled water and I'll say, no, the water's good. Like, it's okay. They give me bottled water.
Yeah, I think most people are not used to drinking tap water anyway. So I think it's rare that someone who's renting is going to be like, I'm just gonna drink out of the sink. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't,
so the consensus is we shouldn't add this.
I think it's a significant complication.
It's tricky. I'm not
I
sure.
mean, you could suggest this be an issue of discussion.
Yeah.
Or investigate so that we acknowledge it, but it opens up a whole can of worms.
But I think the owner, if they knowingly rent to someone who's got a child, for example, and don't divulge this information, they would then be liable to any issue. That's a personal thing back to the
Well,
homeowner.
that's kind of like saying, well, you know,
Got it tested. If I don't know.
yeah,
If somebody drinks our water and they have some kind of detrimental effect from that, they're gonna come after you.
Yes, I would expect that.
Yeah.
You
they
know,
might not ever know, and their job is damaged.
Well, I mean,
but I don't know, like,
that's,
a little extreme.
but yeah, I mean,
If your
I do
water's that
wanna-
bad, you're gonna know. Could you drive people underground who are just not gonna?
Right.
because
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Or I give you my report that says nice and low because it was in that time of year when the water's
Yeah,
flowing through there really
strategically
nicely.
had it tested.
And then, here's, we're good. I mean, I'm not saying that any would, hopefully no one would do that.
You know, I think we've started with like the basic inspections for rentals, like smoke alarms, like safety thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a first step.
Yeah.
And I don't know about this yet because
Yes, it's
it's a
pretty
little
big.
different than.
Right.
Okay.
But I think it might be something we'd want to acknowledge.
I'm putting the note in the natural environment chapter.
Okay, yeah.
Or no, in the housing chapter, sorry.
Housing,
so that
yeah.
It's there.
I think so,
We
yeah.
can think about it.
Okay, comp plan needs to strengthen nearshore overlay district goals and objectives. And the crux of what Lori is saying is, the planning board said that nearshore overlay district is a typo, very disturbing. So whose purview is it? Then if the planning board doesn't address it in chapter 129 and ZBA doesn't address it in chapter 133.
Oh, that's the 133 code. So
Yeah.
133 is the zoning code.
Yeah.
And there's a nearshore overlay section in the zoning code, and it's very poorly written.
Yeah.
And it does look like it's supposed to be a sanitary regulation, but it doesn't make any sense. It needs to be changed.
Right.
We need to update that code.
And we do have a suggestion, 4.4A, that I would suggest covers a bit of what she's discussing there. And, yeah. So,
Or,
A.
yeah, development in the nearshore overlay.
Ensure development is appropriately sized in the NSOD. With increasing impacts of climate change and development pressure, the NSOD code regulations and boundaries should maintain and strengthened. Be maintained and strengthened. Some options include adjusting zoning standards to limit the size, the density of structures, incorporating a small lot ordinance, and discouraging the expansion of non-conforming uses and buildings. Discouraging the expansion, did I say? I hope I did. So I think a lot of it, we've covered a lot of what she was saying. That one code.
What she's pointing out is the zoning the code conflict that we already.
The boards are already recognized, right. Chapter 4, housing, so
Before we do chapter 4, should we do chapter 3 for the other?
Well, I thought because we got,
On chapter 3, we didn't get to those last time.
Yeah,
but we did these comments on 4. So we were gonna do 1 through 4 of these big emails that we got. So let me just finish her chapter 4, and then we go to Jan, and we do 1 through 3 in Jan's.
Oh, okay, I see what you're doing.
And then we'll do, the Heights Property Owners Corporation,
Yes.
1 through 4.
We're good.
1 through 4 Jan, 1 through 4 here.
I'm clear.
Good. I'm letting the boards be my guide. Page 33, average. Yes, I want to, Lori points out a discrepancy here. I think it should be explored, 7.5 versus 10 over the 2011, 2021 decade, and we should discuss the luxury tax that she has. So, like a luxury tax, meaning if you're going to load your property up with tennis courts, pools, pool houses, luxuries, which is discussed in the housing chapter about how the house sizes have trended larger, but overall, what's really been the change is this, the addition of amenities.
amenities.
And should we consider doing a luxury tax on those? I mean, they're sort of captured already in your assessment because they add to your value of your home.
So this would be in addition to the.
Yeah, on top of that, and it was pointed out recently in a discussion, I believe over in the South Fork, that part of what's the whole trade parade thing is there's so many amenities now that need to be maintained and serviced. It will change over time. It will be a driver of change of island character. You know, if more and more houses have more and more luxuries, because the traffic alone will be a bigger impact than it already is. And the housing and the ferry lines, all of it. So the luxury tax idea, I don't know, it's, I don't want to pay more for my pool, but.
Yeah, but how do you do that? How
Do you do it? I think because it's in the assessment, it might be as much as we can do, but clearly for some
And is it
people, it's not going to
retroactive
matter.
or new construction?
Or, yeah.
I mean, there already is, if you're going to apply for a pool, there always a hefty fee for that already in the building department.
Yes.
Is that,
Yeah. And what are other, does anyone know offhand, I'd have to look it up, but what are other townships doing for the pool houses, pools, all the accessory dwellings?
I don't know.
Luxury tax?
I don't think there is a luxury tax. I think it's folded into their assessment. And
Like it is here.
yeah, like it is here, and it's really, you just get slammed on the permit fees.
BJ, is there wiggle room in the assessor's office to, how do you, if we felt that fee or that, I don't know how you, that little bit of money that would be related to the pool or the, could that be increased, that aspect of it, and when you do an assessment?
Yeah, I do know that Judith is in the process of updating all of those rubrics. It's a funny, I want to say it's Cornell, no, Syracuse, it's property, it's the cost basis of a 2x4 is based on a formula out of Syracuse that uses Syracuse. And then, so because we're not there, we're in Suffolk County, we add to that, we have a multiplier. This is all done really by the state.
A multiplier for pools.
Exactly, because I think a pool in Syracuse is probably 20,000 and a pool here starts at 100.
Yeah.
So it's, then I think that the assessors have been working on updating those basic cost factors, multipliers.
Is that part of the reval?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
East Hampton doesn't have it, I just Googled a few,
Yeah.
looked up a few things.
Yeah. So interesting
They
thoughts.
assess the extra assessment, but.
Yeah, interesting thought. Maybe she could bring it up again. Short-term rentals have had a negative impact on island's inventory of all, it just, Meg, if you want to just make a note of that discrepancy of 7.5 versus 10.
Yes.
Okay, just so we can clear that up. Inventory of all size houses. Small homes have always been hard to find, and STRs made that worse, as buyers and LLCs bought up multiple homes for STRs, taking them off the market for first-time home buyers and/or year-round affordable housing. Stricter limits should be considered for STRs. Oh, that was such a difficult road. Or incentives to owners who rent year-round at affordable, reasonable rates. Residential homes should not become transient use hotels. Is the data on page 37 correct? How many people are renting without a rental license?
Well, didn't you guys change the contract for the company that you were using and
Yeah.
have new enforcement staff?
We do. We have a new enforcement officer, and he is also training
Right.
another person in the department to be able to track down when someone is short-term renting and is not registered. So that's step one. And then step two, maybe you shouldn't be short-term renting if you're in the nearshore overlay. So it's a process. This man's code enforcement officer that's part-time has only been on the job 6 months, maybe.
Yeah.
And so the training continues,
Given it enough time yet.
I think. And we do have this, 4.1D, monitor the effectiveness of the short-term rental law, make necessary code adjustments to increase enforcement ability and renter safety. The town should monitor, this is already in our plan, the town should monitor regulations and enforcement carefully to ensure that short-term rentals contribute positively to the community's well-being while minimizing potential negative impacts. Okay, small lot ordinance mentioned with no specific details about what small lot means. Less restrictions, more restrictions, what does it mean? Here it is, 4.4A, small lot ordinance. What?
No, this, go ahead.
Yeah, would address how non-conforming lots can be used or developed while taking their non-conforming status into account. The ordinance might include limits on the maximum size, revised setbacks to control the size of buildings in relation to the lot size, thereby preventing excessive development. Ways to regulate this include the following, may include the following, and then there are some examples that I don't know if we took them out of here or we just took them out of the body of the chapter. I think we just took them out of the body of the chapter, not out of the recommendation. But maybe it's all right in the recommendation.
No, we
take it out?
left this.
Yeah,
What
we left
took
this
out was
body.
the example of floor area ratio with the number breakdown, that we took out because that was causing confusion. But these are the concepts that we should look at, the floor area ratio, pyramid regulations to control height and mass, and then ensuring regulations to discourage illegal conversions.
Of habitable space. So I think we're good there. Parking is not addressed. Larger homes or homes, use of homes by singles, non-married people, usually means more cars and more parking is needed. Doesn't address extra parking for ADUs or home office business use. I don't think this problem exists. I just haven't seen it anywhere where, there's like a house that I pass where there's always cars parked out on the street.
Yeah.
No, but the thing is that people do it even if it depends on the use of the house. It could be someone just after the summer. I mean,
Right.
we do a lot of oyster things and we're at, like up in Ram Island, and there's a lot of cars on that street that one day when they're having a
For an
party.
event, yeah.
But I can't say that it's there all the time.
We wouldn't put parking in, a regulation for, the once or twice a year you have a party or a wedding. But I think she's saying, no, people who are living in houses that we don't have a regulation to say single-family houses need to have X amount of space for parking, but I don't think we need to do that. I think it's a problem looking for a solution, looking for a problem.
I think people usually build in parking when they build their home, like they want to be able to park off the street, they want to have easy access to their house.
And don't you feel with the size of houses increasing, like all the houses I can think of.
Have huge garages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Four-car
I know.
garage, and you can sit park 8 cars in a driveway. So-
Yeah, so I don't think
I mean, the heights may have a problem.
Right.
the
Well,
heights
she
may
may be
have a
thinking of The
problem
heights, because the heights, right, does.
Right.
But you can't park overnight there.
on the street. I mean, so.
But it might be appropriate that the planning board have the option that if they're, they're in high-low, little narrow roads, people have no planned parking on their property.
Yeah.
And they put cars on that little road, narrow road could be a dangerous thing. Maybe they have to say you need more parking on your property. There's
Well, we
something,
do that, for example, when people are doing projects, and staging, so where are they gonna put that happens a lot. In high-low and the heights, so where are they gonna put these construction vehicles while they're building whatever it is they're
but
building?
maybe it should be in the planning process of that, when they're applying for the permit to do that. You need-
It is there. It is there. It is
Okay.
there. Yeah.
And I've never seen that on high-low. I've never seen like a lot of cars on the side of the road.
There was one.
Well, construction's one thing, but I mean, just people, is there a place where?
No, but when construction's, I can think of.
Yeah, construction I get, because you got a whole bunch of workers there at the same time.
But again, it's a party, that type of thing, it could be
Yeah.
an issue, but again, that's a transient thing. It's not
Right.
gonna be there for.
Usually the building department, when they review applications, they look at things like that. So if,
Trouble is, if you're building on a lot, you don't have parking yet.
Right.
It's all, you've just ripped up the grass, so they're gonna be parking on the street. The question is, are they far enough off that they're not a
The Guards
hazard?
does have this with the 1-car, 2-car driveways, or like 1+1, they have a restricted space, I think that's what it's going.
And I have a personal bugaboo about this, the people who put markers or something in the town's property along the edge of the road, they put great big giant rocks there, that's town land and they're claiming it as their own. You can't park there.
That irritates me.
It is there, I mean, it's just,
yeah.
I'm learning to live with that and just,
Get into
they're
it.
just those kind of people, but, it's just.
Yeah.
Well, and in some ways, especially when they put rocks in the right of way, that's dangerous
Yeah.
because that right of way exists for people to be able to get off the street.
Right, if you
should
have to.
something happen. Even for a car to swerve, if it
Yes,
needs to
a
have
deer.
extra space. So, yeah, there's reason to not
I don't
have.
know, could we say something like, with building department applications, just continue to examine parking in the applicant, or I don't know, something like that, to, again, bolster the thing about parking
Right.
through the building department when they apply.
The most you could do is stipulate ideally how many trucks could park on the side of the road. I mean, they can't,
Yeah.
I don't want to put in like 5 parking spaces because the construction guys are building my house and then they're gone and I have 2 cars.
Oh, no, no, I'm
think-
talking about the
Right, the
final
final
plan
final
from the
plan.
architect and what
Right.
they're building.
I think
actually,
what she's
not-
referring to is the concept that, let's say you have your single-family home, and now you put an accessory dwelling unit in. Now you're gonna have one more person, one more car. Is that car accounted for? Can it be parking off the street? Is it? And, I think most people kind of take that into account. I don't think it's a big problem for us.
Because I wouldn't want to park on the street if I was renting your house. I don't want to be there.
Nobody.
Park in the driveway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think we need to not address that. Okay,
To keep, how about everybody else? Is everybody else?
yeah, no, I think we're good.
Okay, you all right with moving on from
Yeah,
there?
that's fine.
Page 42, businesses buying, not to mention, no mention of renting, which also is happening. Businesses buying and or renting, single-family homes for their workers. Seasonal as mentioned, this is on page 42. But it's also happening for year-round workers. Not legal under zoning laws, the draft says, but it doesn't say that. We'll get back to that in a second. But also not legal under New York State Building Code. No, we have a limit of 2 people per bedroom. And if people live together as a family, we cannot legislate that out of existence. That's something you have as of right.
Also, when you do your rental application, you have to put, that's asked of you, it goes by how many bedrooms, and it'll say on the form how many people you can rent to.
Right, exactly. And, in terms of seasonal housing for workers, she's asking, it's not legal to have boarding house in exchange for compensation benefits or for payment. How will this be addressed? This is what it actually says. This is there's very limited supply of rental apartments, and landlords report that when they have a rental opportunity, they quickly receive multiple calls about the property. Renters seeking year-round housing typically find it by word of mouth. There are an unknown number of room rentals that accommodate lower-income individuals, while a few businesses with seasonal employees provide housing for their workers. Some property owners rent apartments that are not legal under the zoning code. We know all of this. And so I think Lori confused that she was saying that it's not legal to rent rooms, to rent a
It's a
house.
statement of what's going on.
Yeah,
We're aware of
exactly.
this violation.
Exactly. It doesn't say that they're buying, it doesn't say that house share is illegal, and so I don't know how the rent is being charged. Like, coming out of your paycheck, or in exchange, I don't,
Is that the town's business?
I know, there was this one
It
house.
comes down to enforcement, though.
Right.
If there is a problem and something comes up, then it's enforcement's job to check it and make sure that the house isn't exceeding its appropriate capacity.
And that's really as far as we go.
Officer and
That's
somebody makes the
enforcement.
call,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That should ideally take care of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Page 43, create ADUs. No mention of affordability or restrictions to keep them affordable. Why should relief be granted from town code if not affordable? Restrictions on rentals and rates in perpetuity? Well, I think we do need year-round housing at market rents as well as affordable housing. Year-round dependable housing where you just don't get kicked out for July and August because they can do better. So I think in private hands, that's not a bad thing. The ADUs that are being,
Right now, CDCO, right?
yep, they do have restrictions on affordability. And the relief from town code that is being promulgated in the following, other priorities for the short term, meaning not short-term rentals, but for the short-term time period, include increasing year-round accessory dwelling units through grants and low-interest loans, code amendments and enforcement, a comprehensive, which does not include NSOD, by the way. A comprehensive review of the town code is needed to ensure that it's consistent with the goal of increasing year-round community housing opportunities, and the existing registry list should be updated to get a sense of the real demand for ADUs. I think that's a good starting point. Illegal conversions are mentioned. This is Lori again, but this also affects septic system sizes, which ties back to groundwater pollution. Suffolk County Health requires approval for all conversions, as some design professionals and/or contractors are promoting these illegal conversions. Many are being rented without renters knowing that they are drinking water in close proximity to a cesspool. And buyers are also not being told of these same problems during property transfer. Again, we have it in there. This practice is commonly known as illegal conversions or unpermitted renovations. It's been a means to bypass building regulations et cetera. To address this issue, the town should evaluate zoning requirements. I just think it's covered. And page 45, density comment, should not exceed more than 2 units per acre. Whose opinion is this? What does that question mean?
I have a recommendation for this, because I think that the concept of units is confusing for people.
Okay,
So I looked at it today, I was reviewing it, and instead of acres, I think we should say residences, because it's 1 acre per residence. And so if we do it that way, then I think it's less confusing, 2 acres per residence instead of unit, because people understand that a residence is a home.
So it means like two home, one
Well,
home
when
per-
you're looking at, so in the sentence here, strengthen limits on density in residentially zoned areas. So then the sentence is, existing zoning regulations regulate housing density, which depending on the district is either 1 acre per residence, 1 acre zoning, or 2 acres per residence, 2 acre zoning. It's widely understood that building sanitary sewers will help improve water quality and managing wastewater treatment. So now, then I think if we go down a little later on, it says, it is important to affirmatively state that if public sewers and water supplies are built, the residential density of existing residentially zoned areas shall be maintained, period. And just leave it there. Don't add the and should never exceed 2 units per acre, because that's just confusing. And if we state
Can we go
that,
back to 1 acre, 2 acre? That phrase sounds more like, I'm used to that phrase other than
Right.
1 unit. Let's just go 1
Right.
acre zoning, 1 acre,
Right.
2 acre
Right.
zoning.
right,
so
yeah,
what we were trying to capture here, that as of right, currently, on Shelter Island, you can build a house and you can build an accessory unit on 1 acre. That's what you can do.
which is what the county and the state consider a residence.
Right.
That's innate in
Yeah.
having that.
So I think we were trying to capture that originally. I think Meg's
Yeah,
edit is a good one.
So, and then, so just
so take that out.
by taking the line and ending it, that residential density of existing, the residential density of existing residentially zoned areas shall be maintained, period. So just leave that, there's no
Basically don't change
question.
it.
And then it just doesn't confuse anything by trying to say what it should never exceed, because that's where there's confusion, because it totally depends on definition and people are going to define it differently.
Yes.
Actually,
depending on their
Herman sentence
understanding.
says, I suggest a reword to match county regulations, so
Right.
that's what.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that just kind of makes it cleaner, a little less confusing.
They're only,
We keep circling back to that over and over
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
It keeps coming up everywhere in everyone's
so-
comments.
so, hopefully we're chipping away at the cloudiness of our wording, of our language. Okay, 2 more points, that's it. Page 48 talks about develop strict criteria for evaluating exceptions for established land use. And criteria should be developed for what constitutes a hardship. What is a hardship?
We talked about that, yeah.
Right, and so, and it's there. Okay, page 48, a tree preservation.
Tree topping.
Yeah, I didn't really know this, and it turns out to be
Yeah, that's true.
totally true. So how about we add a sentence
Yep.
to the tree,
Yep.
to the tree thing, that, no topping. Lollipopping is okay?
Actually, lollipopping is according to code.
Oh,
What is that?
that's right, it is in there. If you take the lower limbs,
Underbrush,
Yeah.
and you leave the top.
Oh, okay, right.
yeah,
I
Oh, I
believe
see.
there's a degree of that that is allowed.
yeah, I think you're right, feel like I remember that.
So that doesn't hurt the tree, but cutting it off the top does.
Right.
Interesting.
Because it grows from the top up.
Cutting the top and also covering the roots with too much soil.
Right.
During construction,
Strangle it.
like as they toss soil on other trees that they're not planning to cut down, those trees get affected.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that until.
Also, driving over the roots repeatedly will kill the tree.
Yes, that's, yeah.
okay, so we want to move on. You want to do the next one, Meg? My voice is getting weary.
Sure, hold on, let me just add tree topping.
Thank you.
Now we're going to.
John Sudol.
For putting Lori aside,
So we went through chapter 4.
Yes.
Got it.
Lori to 4.
Lori's to chapter 4, and it's on chapter 5. Okay.
We're on 5, right?
We're gonna go
Or back
to Jan
Oh,
now.
Jan's. We're
So
still on
Jan's,
4?
Same
we're gonna
day.
do Jan's chapter 3 and then Jan's
okay.
chapter 4.
Okay.
Should have, if you can't find it, let me know. I think it's the same date.
Should I
Nope, nope,
present?
nope,
No,
nope,
no,
nope,
We
no.
got
I'm
it.
gonna go by your written comments.
Okay. Chapter 3, page 29. In the interest of, list all 73 subdividable parcels, including owner, tax map, address, parcel number, total build out with subdivision lots, broken down by categories used in table 6. No.
Why not?
No,
Because
can't.
if we were, to essentially, that would be giving out
Private information.
that role and then dividing it. I mean, what you're asking for is, I think, too in-depth for the document.
Does it have anything to do with privacy issue?
Well,
Well, that's kind of public document,
I
but
mean, they theoretically can go to the building department or the assessor's office, but putting that in a document like this just seems like it's,
yeah, and anyone can look at this map and discern the implications. This is also, we could make a list, but this document is not going to be updated every minute.
Right.
And these are real estate transactions are happening all the time. So to include that kind of data doesn't seem to me to be efficient.
I mean, if you could add something like see whatever building document, or, I mean, if somebody is concerned about any point in time, they want to know what's going
You
on.
know what we could do is, there is one place, the CPF has really not been moving with alacrity on this, but they are supposed to do an acquisition plan every 5 years. It's 5 years overdue. But in there, I think it's the first appendix, has a list of all properties on Shelter Island that are potentially subdividable, et cetera. Yeah, so we could include that, that the CPF acquisition plan, when updated, should be included in this document, which I don't know if I'm gonna have time. I've been working on it because
No one else has?
no one else had. So, but that being said, it could be one of the first things that gets done, by the new people sitting here whenever they get here.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
That's a good reference point.
and then it'll have the detail that this,
It doesn't clog the comp plan, but they can refer.
yes, exactly, and it's right there. Okay,
That's true
good.
for a number of other documents too, where you want to make sure people know.
also
If you
recognizing
want a lot of detail, you go here.
it's a snapshot.
It's a snapshot, and it does change.
Because they'll change ownership, they'll.
Yeah.
All right, chapter 3, page 31. After discussion of current land use, zoning, and development potential, the zoning chapter ends abruptly on page 31 without any goals or action items in other chapters. Why is that? Is this chapter not complete if no changes to zoning or spot zoning for non-conforming businesses operating residential zones, which the consultants alluded to at one of the recent CPAC meetings, are envisaged? This should be explicitly stated. Okay, so this, I think, circles back to the fact that it should say existing built environment, land use, and zoning conditions. So
We've changed the title.
it's the existing conditions. It doesn't currently list all the zoning changes, but we are going to take essentially the table from chapter 11 that lists all the zoning changes and put at the end of this chapter so that it's there for reference, because that's what people are asking for, and I think it makes sense.
So did covered that.
Let's see. And the other thing that we did discuss about this chapter is that it does stop without listing the issues that we're seeing with our current zoning. So we were going to add that part in.
Yes.
So that'll be an addition to it. And so the issues that I have right now listed for our current zoning is that there's a lot of vacancy in the B1 zone. So we have a lot of open storefronts and things, and we're wondering, so this is what I have written for those examples. I have some of the issues that we're encountering are that we have many vacant buildings in the town center. There doesn't seem to be enough demand for professional office space to fill the vacancies. Is there something that can be done by the town, done at the town level by modifying the B1 district to reduce vacancies? And then light industrial development is scattered throughout the B zone and can be unsightly on our main streets. How can we address this issue? So those are kind of the two issues that I currently see in our zoning with the B and the B1 zone. I don't know if there are other issues that we see in zoning that we want to add to this list, but those are just the two that I know come up over and over again. It's the vacancy in the center and the unsightliness of industrial parks popping up. I mean, we know we have pre-existing non-conforming businesses and residential areas, but that's something that people want to maintain the status quo on, so I don't necessarily know that we need to
We
list.
might end up putting the marine district issues there
Yes.
too.
If-
I don't know, we'll
If
have
we
to discuss.
decide to keep it in there, yes.
Might end up there as a
Right,
problem.
so if we, yeah, we'll move it if we think that's, but
Yeah.
for now, those are the two big things that I have that keep coming up
Yep.
again and again.
Yeah, the Marine District is the other big one, but we won't get into that till we get to
Yeah,
that
we'll see
chapter.
if it's even.
That's a big.
But it might be worth putting there just simply because you're talking about zoning. And
Okay.
and you can even say discussed further in chapter so-and-so.
Right.
Okay. And then there's no mention of ADUs in the nearshore overlay district, which was floated recently by the community housing group and opposed by various civic organizations. The chapter should explicitly state that no changes to the nearshore overlay zones should be permitted. In particular, ADUs in the nearshore overlay will not be permitted.
It does say,
They're already not allowed in the nearshore overlay. And the recommendations we have are to strengthen the nearshore overlay district.
yeah.
I know, so we keep saying that, and people keep saying
It isn't.
it's not there, so
Right.
should we just put like a red stamp somewhere?
It doesn't hurt to be explicit.
Yeah,
Repeat things a number of times.
Right.
We must try to like somehow pull that out or start it off in a paragraph somewhere. Because if I have to hear that one more time, like how else do we?
Yeah.
I think it's because people in the nearshore overlay who have the potential to provide year-round housing are shut out from this. And I think that maybe it had come up at a meeting or somebody had mentioned it or something like that. So it's come up because folks want to do something, but they can't because of where they are.
Right.
Right.
And,
But that same owner can have an accessory dwelling.
yeah.
They can have an accessory
Somebody-
sleeping quarter.
Sorry, accessory
Yeah.
sleeping quarters and.
As long as there's no stove.
Putting,
it's totally
you know,
cool.
their family members in there, but, so I think that's where it come from, so
Yeah.
why people keep asking about it.
Right.
But it seems like they're asking for it not because they want it, but because they don't want it.
They're worried about.
No, I think it came up because people were asking like, what can there,
So-
like, is there a way to skirt it or
Well,
something?
what happened
That's
was,
interesting.
the community housing board was discussing
They were just
the
discussing it.
ADU +1 grant, and they were saying that we're not allowed to put ADUs in the nearshore overlay because it's restricted in the code. And so then the argument was, well, why is it restricted in the code? And is it possible that we could get a housing license for people who want to put one in the nearshore overlay? And so that's where that conversation came
And
up.
that's where that conversation died. Frankly, I mean,
Never
it
has,
did.
no, it hasn't died.
I know.
It hasn't died.
I'm sure it won't die, but most of the people commenting are affirming the rules not to do this.
Right,
Not
and-
to allow it.
In 4.4A, to Rebecca's point, code regulations and boundaries should be I'm sorry, let me start. With increasing impacts of climate change and development pressure, the nearshore overlay district code regulations and boundaries should be, maybe it should be should be maintained and strengthened. But maybe it should be everywhere it needs to be,
Yeah, I think that's,
in more than one.
I think that's
Everywhere,
the way to go.
Reiterate.
Yeah.
What we're telling them and tell them
As
again.
you're reading, you're thinking of this and you don't realize it's going to come up in a later chapter. You immediately say like, well, why is this not mentioned?
Yeah.
Because you said 4.4, right?
Right.
And this is where I said, look at more, this is the one we keep coming back to that keeps needing
Yeah.
refinement.
Right. And to your point, then, if we're gonna get really, affirmative and strict in nearshore overlay, and let's maintain and strengthen the code as it exists, maintain and strengthen, does that mean we say no more accessory sleeping quarters? Because the idea is, it's a sensitive area, it's worth thinking about.
Well, and I think they are the same thing. An accessory sleeping quarter and accessory apartment are essentially the same thing.
There are people who would argue that.
Stovetop and you're
Right,
fine.
yeah.
There are people though who will.
I lived in a dorm. You can do anything
I know.
with nothing.
I know, especially if you like ramen. But there are people that will argue that an accessory sleeping quarter, if used like that, is used much more lightly than an ADU. That's the argument,
Completely different use.
Well, I know
That's how my
people-
daughter lives on this with two children,
yeah.
with a hot plate and a microwave and a refrigerator. Yeah. Well, how else do you think she lives around here?
No, it's true.
No, I get really like agitated because she has a full-time job, she's raising two kids, and with that type of salary, not really a salary, she can't afford a big, she's not gonna spend $3,000, she doesn't have it yet. She's just out of a divorce, and working on North Ferry gives her a great wage, but she's one income. So she takes the rental that doesn't have a kitchen. And so that's what she's living on, a hot plate, a,
Toaster
oven, a fancy one. Yeah. She's got a refrigerator, and she actually has a sink. And she actually cooks really great meals. But yes, that's how she makes it on Shelter Island.
Yeah, my friend was a house washer.
You can do many amazing
You can
things,
do
but.
amazing things with very little.
But,
My friend was a house washer and she lived on the property in the accessory sleeping quarters year round for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
That was
That's why we're calling for affordable housing.
Right.
Where you have
Yes.
a normal kitchen.
Yeah.
Right, but that's also maybe why we
But the
call,
point is that it doesn't mean that just because it's accessory sleeping, it's not being used 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Luckily, she's not in the Near Shore Overlay District, so,
your conscience is clear.
but.
So we're getting pressure from both sides. though.
Exactly.
Right.
But we need to really clean up that language so it's very, very clear so that we don't keep getting back
So
to.
we need to put it in again, is what
Yeah.
I think we agreed on, right?
Yeah. There's got to be more areas that this will come up, we can say that sentence needs to go back in there. Okay.
We're still on for housing.
Right. So we just finished 3 for Jan, so now I'm gonna go to 4. Page 43, a comprehensive review of the town code is needed to ensure it is consistent with the goal of increasing year-round community housing opportunities. This is an unacceptably broad statement, giving the town carte blanche for changing zoning as it sees fit, as long as the developments are labeled community housing. This document is purportedly comprehensive plan, so any specific changes sought for the community housing should be included in the draft comprehensive plan and then subject to the community scrutiny via public review process. This statement should be removed from the draft. So,
Where are we? Page 43, let's see.
It's kind of from the middle of paragraph 43.
Oh, shoot.
yeah, so it states that a comprehensive review of the town code is needed to ensure it is consistent with the goal of increasing year-round community housing opportunities, and the existing registry list should be updated to get a sense of the demand for ADUs. Ongoing or long-term priorities include developing and implementing design standards for community housing, considering the potential for apartments above stores and offices, and supporting the establishment of community land trust. This comprehensive plan supports and carries forward the recommendations of the community housing plan as detailed below.
So really what you need is you need a qualifier. It's a comprehensive review of the town code is needed to ensure it's consistent with the goals of increasing year-round community housing options and balancing that with maintaining the integrity or the nature, the nature of the community.
Right.
So you've got to kind of get both concepts in there.
I mean, it's what the paragraph here is quoting is the housing plan.
Right.
So that is, and other priorities include increasing year-round accessory dwelling units through, et cetera, and a comprehensive review of the town code. I don't even know that needs to be stated, that entry part there.
Well, it is part of the affordable housing planning, but at the same time, if you just read that, it does have that connotation that this is the main thing that matters.
Goal, right.
The only goal,
Yeah.
and it isn't. So you have to kind of, because we've been talking about all these zoning restrictions or reviews and enforcement.
Right, so if we add, to ensure it's consistent with the goal of increasing year-round community housing opportunities while being sensitive to environmental restrictions.
In zoning,
And zoning.
existing zoning, which is pretty strong. Because Emily say, so.
as well, taking. So while taking zoning into account.
Yeah, because this entire chapter is really both descriptive, but then it seems like the only thing it's really focusing as recommendation is the affordable housing plan. You want to acknowledge that there are all sorts of other issues preserving the nature of the community.
Well,
But you don't want to lose.
yeah,
Right.
but this is in housing, though, it's also discussing the large house thing, too,
The
right?
large house.
Isn't that in our recommendations at the end? I think it is.
At the end, right.
Yeah, right.
But then again, if we bring some of these recommendations here and then collect them in chapter 11, people can see, oh, okay, they have not forgotten that point.
Right.
Yeah, good.
The next one is on page 44. Establish a graduated limit on the size of new houses, both knockdowns and new construction. The example for limiting the size of a house is 3,200 square feet on a 1 acre lot, 5,200 square feet on a 2 acre lot. This has never been discussed. So this comes back to the example.
This is the
of
one we
having a floor
eliminated,
area
yeah.
ratio, and so we've deleted that. We
Right.
deleted that section.
The example part, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because it does seem to be setting limits just
Right.
randomly and.
Yeah, yeah.
Confusing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The next one is address the issue of illegal conversions. This is a red herring. Instead of addressing the issue of enforcement, this action item proposes further reduction of square footage of houses that can be built on the parcel. This idea would lower the value of the buildable parcel and should be vetted with the community via multiple public hearings. So that, I mean, that concept, if it does come up, we will have public hearings associated with it because it would be a change to the way that the calculation for like the square foot floor area ratio is done. So it would absolutely be done with public hearings involved.
But it's been loud and clear that stricter guidelines, when it comes to the NSO, is what this community wants. And substandard lots is part of that.
Yes, but the concept here of reducing or of including more of the square footage of the house, not just the habitable condition space.
Right.
As the total square footage when you're calculating or when you're determining
Max.
what your max floor area is. That concept in and of itself does need to go for public hearing because it would be a code change on
Yes.
how we calculate square footage.
Yeah.
Because you have to see how viable it really is. Is it going to be too confusing? How does the building department calculate it? How does the assessor's office calculate it? How is it going to
Yeah,
change things? So it needs a thorough vetting.
yeah.
Would it necessarily have to be different between the two, assessors and building department? If we, the idea of what is air conditioned or handbacked space, period.
One of the measures inside and one of the measures outside. That's the bottom line. And they do come up slightly differently. And so, and they're working on that now. That's not a comp plan issue, if you ask me. It's, they're going to try to get their databases to agree. What happened historically is the assessor took the plans and made his calculations. And then the building department took the same plan and made a different calculation. So they should really agree, just for.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, they should.
that's John's point.
Yeah, that's my point. So maybe you have a porch, which is not air conditioned or whatever, or you have a
Right.
patio or a deck, something like that. Yeah, that's separate. But the space that is going to be.
But if you measure it from the inside walls, it's a different square footage calculation than the outside walls, because it's 6 inches at least, right? And if it's on a 6,000 square foot house, that can become significant.
If you can figure out a way of living inside of a wall,
John's only the mice have figured that one.
I know.
Right, it's seriously, yeah.
You know, black hole in there, I think it's.
How often that happens in the planning board applications, when we have like multiple versions of things,
Yeah.
they come through and we're all looking at it saying, well, this calculation seems off by, and it's usually inter, external.
Yeah, and there isn't an agreement, until you make it so,
But that would be just language to our code, how we compute that. And we can probably find a number that works for both, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Strengthen limits on density in residentially zoned areas. This is a particularly galling example of gaslighting, as this action item proposes increasing density in residential and business areas. And then it is important to affirmatively state that if public sewers are built, the residential density of existing residentially zoned areas should be maintained. And we've kind of changed this so that it doesn't have the weird units conversation.
Why don't we address this?
We have, yes.
Yes, we have.
And then further, it does not preclude the use of cluster subdivisions where houses are, or buildings are grouped together, leaving larger portions of land undeveloped as open space. While cluster subdivisions may have smaller individual lots, the overall density of the development is not significantly increased. The comment is that this would not increase overall density only if, for example, the units are built on half-acre lots. Half of the subdivided parcel is left undeveloped as a space, which obviously is economically the same as building out the entire subdivided parcel with units of 1-acre lots. Building out subdivided parcels with units on half-acre lots of leaving 10% of parcel undeveloped will result in almost doubling overall density.
That's confusing. The 10% set aside in a major subdivision, we're recommending it should be a 30% set aside in a major subdivision, because 10% is not mentioned anywhere else. So that 10% just doesn't belong there.
Yeah, but forget the last sentence, focus on the rest.
I understand what you're saying. So you're saying we have a subdivision, and let's say it's 5 lots, right? And when you do a subdivision, instead of doing 5 lots of equal size, he's saying you take those lots and you're making them smaller to have more open space.
Yes.
So
Which is recommended.
it has less environmental impact when you do it that way. So you would take, and so what Jan is saying is that you're actually reducing the value of each lot because they're smaller. So instead of having the full, like, let's say it's 5 1-acre lots, essentially now you're having a half-acre lot with half.
Open space.
But you don't have to do this.
But typically, the way a cluster subdivision is done is that it's like the open space is kind of owned by everybody. And then each lot owns a portion of the open space. It's kind of,
With its dock and dog house, it's amenity, and it's boathouse. Also, I don't believe this is saying, this is not saying that it doesn't preclude the use of cluster subdivisions. It doesn't preclude the use, it doesn't also demand the use. Yeah, so it's just, it would be up to the person who is subdividing it, perhaps.
Don't you still come back to the health department, they want 1 unit
Yeah.
per acre.
Yeah, but this health department allows cluster,
How do they get around it with the septic then? What?
because it's no more flow, the flow is the same on that 5-acre
And
parcel.
you've got the open space.
Yeah, you have to have the open space.
and what they may also do is a community system.
I was just gonna say, IA, community.
That should be a caveat that's in there, because I could see it only really working in it within having a community system. Because if you're trying to take care of your waste on half an acre, and you got a neighbor right next to you on half
Right.
an acre, it's not gonna work.
Yeah,
You know,
typically,
we have wells, so it's gotta be.
Now I see, yeah.
right, so typically, that's the way a clustered subdivision would work. You'd also have a community wastewater system.
Yeah.
So
hopefully, like,
it's a bigger
PSC to
project. This
keep
would be
open
someone who wanted to come in and do like housing and then have a clustered system with you'd.
Do they have to do that though, or can they just have it as John
It's
described it?
optional. But we've never done it on the planning board in my history of the
Right.
planning board.
I know.
It's just another option for how you choose to.
So it's not saying that you can't, it's
Right.
just saying if you do, this will occur.
Right.
I don't think you guys understand what I was trying to say.
Well, at the end of the work session, then just make a note, come up and tell
Well,
us.
no, I think I understand that you're saying that it would reduce the property value of the people who are on that property.
And that's a maybe.
I'll explain it in my comment period.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Further, if infrastructure is in place, cluster systems or wastewater treatment facilities, it may be reasonable to consider limited locations in business zones where additional housing types and densities might be allowed. These offending statements must be removed and replaced with the statements that no upzoning in the existing residential and business zones will be permitted, with the possible exemption for town-owned rental community housing units. So I guess the question is,
On town land.
right, on town land, yes, thank you. So the question being posed is, do we want to say that should water and wastewater infrastructure become available in the business zones, we want to restrict the density that might be allowed, so make it essentially not allow for apartments above stores or additional housing.
Not just business,
capacity.
business and residential.
Doesn't say that, just says business, though. So,
Well, in residential zones, we already say that we do not want to increase any density in residentially zoned areas. So we've already made that statement strongly in the document. So the question is, in the business zone, because we've said in business zone, we would be willing to consider increasing density in areas if they were to have public sewer and water, because that would serve, it would serve a need. So the question is, do we want to limit that in business zones, or do we want to allow the potential for increased density in business zones should they have sewer and water?
Yeah.
And I mean, I would
That would
say
be like
yes,
apartments
because
above business?
it would be like apartments above shops and things of that nature.
Otherwise, it really wouldn't benefit if we really want to get, say, more housing. We just couldn't have more housing.
Regulated anyway by health department, by the size of the parcel that the
Right.
business sits on? I mean.
It would be, but it's regulated also by our zoning code. So
Right.
we can, so B1 and B zones have specific zoning regulations, so, and for density and things like that. So we have the ability to change that based on our zoning code. So it's saying in the future, should we have sewer and water, do we want to allow leeway for the town board to adjust zoning in that zone?
It would have to go before.
And-
Right.
Yeah, it would. It would have to go before.
Then you have to make sure you have the
In which
capacity.
case it would die quickly if people are against it.
Correct.
Well, I don't understand then what else we could put into, that's how the process already works?
Right.
Okay, first of all, the statement is under the strength and limits on density in residential zone areas. Okay, so it's not just business.
No, it shouldn't be commented.
But this one stipulates in business zones. The quote that's included here is in
Right.
business zones. It's not talking about residential.
Right. So the goal is to, it says clearly that we want to restrict or strengthen limits on density in residentially zoned areas, not allow, yes. But then it also says it may be reasonable to consider limited locations in business zones where additional housing types and densities may be appropriate. So it says residential zones should be restricted, but there may be potential areas in business zones where it could be appropriate. So it's making that distinction between residential and business.
That should be a.
I can see where it could be, it's like a contrast. You're saying, hey, we're ensuring the strengthening of the residential, but just to remind you, we might have this come up in the business zone, and it's side by side to contrast, but I can see how, I can see where it might be a little confusing.
So
I understand.
your confusion is because the heading says strengthen limits of density in residentially zoned areas. You're objecting to the fact that it then does mention the potential for increased density in business zones because it's misleading because the heading is not matching the text.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I understand.
Good. I just want to pause here because it's almost 8:15 to, I don't know, kind of losing my ability to focus, but I don't want to be the party pooper.
Me too.
Yeah.
Same, and I was hoping it was gonna end somewhere around 8:30.
You know, which means we need to leave room for comment.
Yeah, so
I've
maybe-
already told
Can
Mr.
I suggest we, even though we haven't gotten as far as we want, that we cut it off and.
Hear comments
Hear the
and-
Last one.
Fresh.
Yes.
Some
of these things we've already.
And
Yeah, some of them are
I
covered.
think I just realized what Jan was talking about. It's what you said, except that will only ensure a non-increase in density if you do it that way. That's what he.
Yeah, we could make that paragraph clearer so that,
Nick's made the note.
okay.
Okay, so I just want to comment on the subdivision, which.
Wait a minute, which one is that? Which one is that? Oh, it's one of your comments, Jan?
The comment that we just looked at with the subdivision.
With the cluster?
Page 2.
Cluster subdivisions.
So let's just consider a theoretical undivided lot which has 15 acres, okay? So we can divide it into 15 parcels of 1 acre each. Each parcel, it's probably worth today, what, 400,000, something like that? Okay, and let's say we wanna take half of the parcels, okay? Or half of this land and subdivide it into half an acres lots, okay? Then we're gonna get 15 parcels, okay, of half an acre. Hold on a second. We take half of the area of 15 acres, which is 7.5, and subdivided into half an acre parcels. So we have still 15 parcels, okay? So the price of each parcel should be half, more or less. Instead of being 400,000, it's 200,000, so great. Everybody's happy, you know, we can build less expensive housing because land costs less, okay? But you still have, you set aside half of the entire 15-acre parcel. Somebody has to pay for this, and it's gonna be developer who will be charging that 200,000 per each half an acre back to the owners. So all you got is a higher density on half of that lot, but not the lower price, because somebody has to pay. That has to be charged back to those units. So that's what I'm saying, that this statements of subdivision that we're gonna, I've lost my train of thought.
But again, the statement is, does not include.
Lots.
But you're also benefiting from the open space.
Yeah.
That's the concept.
That's the concept.
Part of a development that has open space.
I'm just talking about economics right now.
No, well, that's what I think.
Economics doesn't work.
It does, because I have to pay for that open space, even though it's not my personal.
It's like if you were in a condominium complex, you would still pay for the public space that has a swimming pool and a tennis court and everything. That would be part of your.
Okay, so what's the
HOA fee.
purpose? Now we created parcels, you know, half an acre parcels instead of 1 acre parcels, and we have those units, but they're not cheaper because the cost of land set aside has to be paid.
It's more of an environmental thing.
It's open space.
Just have open space.
That has nothing to do with economics.
Yeah.
Well, how is that making sense? Economics doesn't make sense, so we have houses, hold on a second. We have houses on smaller lots.
Right, no,
which
I
cost the
think we
same
understand what you
as
mean.
the houses on 1 acre lots. And so we have open space, but all the lots are smaller. So I thought, hold on a second. I thought that the purpose of.
Oh, was to make them less expensive?
Making less expensive. You're not making them less expensive. They cost the same. Hold on a second. They cost the same, but you have just higher density. So what's the point?
Well, what it does is so what we tend to have all over the island is 1 acre zoning, which creates a suburban sprawl kind of concept. If you have cluster, like a cluster subdivision, it changes the aesthetics of it, but it also changes the functionality of it. So if you have homes closer together, you can have a smaller community. You can take that subdivision and create a community. So you could create a senior community where it's easier walkability, it's easier to visit your friends, you have everyone closer together, and then you have that open space, you have that preserved area, which that's actually a healthier way to develop if you're using a large space, because it's compact development in one area, but it's offset by all the open space. So it provides you with a different type of living arrangement.
It can also, it has to do with stress. So when people are in close proximity in terms of like the housing and living, it does create stress. I mean,
So having
there's
open
science on that
space is
even.
nice
So,
for
yeah.
that. But it allows
This isn't part of the
for,
affordable housing proposal, is it? I mean, is this supposed to be affordable?
Nothing to do with it.
It's just an alternative, so.
it's an alternative.
But what I'm
It
trying
won't
to
change
convey
cost.
is the economics of this makes no sense. Okay, so
Well,
why
you're
do
right.
it?
You're right.
You just
The
get
cost-
higher density, the same cost, so
But the
why
cost is going to be
would?
passed on to whoever's going to be living there. They'll pay for it in one way.
In other words, I'm
That's
buying
right.
not just my
So-
property, I'm buying the open,
Right.
my share of the open
Access
space.
to it.
But Mr. Sedal, no one's saying you have to do it, it's a suggestion.
It makes
The plan
sense.
is about making suggestions for things that can make life better
Yes.
on Shelter
I can
Island.
actually think of a reason, a way,
And-
why you would do this, and it would make sense economically, just, again, doesn't preclude. If there was a viewscape, where the only way to build houses, everybody got a piece of that viewscape, would be to do it this way, otherwise there's gonna be somebody in front and somebody behind. I could see where the value of your half acre plus your communal
have a wider
value,
view.
you'd get the view. And that would be one place where it would make sense. Furthermore, this is in the discussion of Sylvester Manor, which we took out.
Oh, no, wait, really?
No,
Yes, we did.
We did take it out. What are we kidding?
No, but cluster,
is it someplace else?
cluster systems, where?
Well, what I'm saying is, I could see if this would make housing cheaper, but it won't.
Right.
Okay, you just
Yeah,
get
that's
higher
not
than-
its goal.
That's not its goal.
So what's the goal then?
The
Environment.
goal is environment. It's open, preserving open space.
It's
Yeah, but
aesthetics
at the
Oh, there it is.
expense of
environmental.
changing character of the island and going into higher density.
What's up?
No, no.
It is in
Thomas,
Sylvester.
If most.
Page 45.
If you have to pay the same price, most people would rather have a house, the same house on 1 acre lot.
Then
Half an acre.
that's what
That
they
would
would
be a
buy.
choice.
So it's less enlightened,
But it
yes.
also takes a certain interested party to go into a development like that. It's not gonna be for everybody.
Okay, so now I'm getting to the last sentence of this
But did you hear what I
sentence
said?
is,
Did you hear my
I'm sorry,
response?
could you repeat that?
I'm saying it depends, it would depend on the interested party. This kind of development is not for everybody. So it would only, it would attract a certain, like maybe senior, maybe, it's just a certain type of attracted to a buyer who would go in there or a renter, let's say.
But the point was, at least you can't develop those 15 acres with
15 houses.
half-acre plots throughout the entire thing. You have to at least, if you're gonna do the smaller plots, you've
Right.
gotta preserve half of that.
So here's the connection. This is actually what's gonna happen, okay? Because you're gonna set aside just 10%, because then it starts making economic sense. And then you build out entire 15 acres with 30 units, minus some couple set aside, okay? Because then economics starts working. So now we're circling back to basically what you're proposing is increasing density, because that will make economic sense. The other thing, the statement that this will not increase overall density, I don't buy it because economics don't work.
Okay.
Okay,
We've heard
thank you. Period.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the room have any questions or comments? Anyone on Zoom? All right, I don't see anybody on Zoom. So,
But we're not done with this chapter yet either, are we?
no, we're not done with these.
I think there's 4 more points by Mr. Sudol, and then we have North Ferry. But we should be able to go through a lot of North Ferries we've heard.
Yeah.
Wait, did North Ferry,
Or, I'm sorry, not North.
okay, good, all right, great. That I've got, yeah.
If it wouldn't be too much of an inundation, I could go through the heights and see which ones we have already discussed. And just put like, whatever, a light X through them or something like, so that we don't read them and.
Good idea if we've already
Do that.
dealt with that precise request.
Yes, where there isn't much to add. Okay,
Redundancy at this point.
all right, so I'll mail those.
Fine that people are sharing the same concerns.
Right, exactly. And if we've already addressed it, then yes. Okay, I'll do that for.
That'd be great.
So
When is the next meeting?
we haven't actually determined the next meeting date yet. So yes, check the website. I gave everybody a list of dates that the evenings here are open, so they're all going to get back to me with what's.
Pass those around my best at this point.
Yeah, I can do my best.
Right. Nobody has any comments? I'll make a motion to close the meeting for the evening.
So just so I
And that,
Oh. White guys, just.
make sure I know where the Heights comments are in the emails, just because I want to make sure I have them all in one place.
Will we just where with Lori Raymond, you'll.
Oh, right. What is it?
to attach.
Gotcha. The top
All in the
are the
same.
Heights. Yep.
Yeah, there's 2 of them, yeah.
Okay, good. I think I downloaded them already,
That's a
but I
good
want to make
point.
sure.
Good points there.
Did we close?
Okay, we have,
So
oh, yeah.
I made a motion, John seconded.
Okay.
All in favor?
All right.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank
Good
you.
night.